This one's a murder mystery drenched in glamour, lies, and pure genius. A British heiress, rich, beautiful, and newly married, sets off on a dreamy honeymoon cruise down the Nile. But before the champagne goes flat, she's found dead in her cabin, shot in cold blood. What was supposed to be a romantic getaway turns into a floating crime scene. And here's the kicker, almost everyone on board had a motive, and the perfect opportunity. Who pulled the trigger, and why? Today, we dive into the chillingly brilliant adaptation of Agatha Christie's classic whodunit, Death on the Nile, a tale where love is lethal, everyone's a suspect, and the killer's plan is so twisted, it'll make your head spin. Lynette is young, beautiful, and newly rich, having just inherited a massive fortune. Practically overnight, she becomes one of the most dazzling figures in British high society. One day, her close friend Jacqueline visits with her fiancé, Simon Doyle, asking Lynette to help him find a job. But Lynette falls for the handsome Simon at first sight, and in a shocking betrayal, the two begin a secret relationship. Within 3 months, Lynette and Simon marry, and their wedding makes headlines across the country. Jacqueline, devastated by the betrayal, is left seething with rage. After the wedding, Simon takes Lynette on a honeymoon to Egypt, where they board a luxurious river steamer to begin their scenic voyage. But word of their trip spreads, and soon a number of individuals with hidden agendas also board the boat under the guise of vacationing. Among them is Salome Audubon, a sharp-tongued writer, and her stunning daughter Rosalie. Salome once wrote a scandalous biography of Lynette and was sued for defamation. Now facing massive damages, she boards the ship hoping to reach a settlement. Marie Van Schuyler, a snobbish American socialite, has her eyes on Lynette's exquisite pearl necklace and plots to claim it for herself. Her private nurse, Miss Bowers, also bears resentment. Once from a wealthy family, her fortune was ruined by Lynette's father's business dealings, forcing her into servitude. Dr. Karl Bessner, a German physician, once treated one of Lynette's friends and allegedly caused permanent mental damage. Lynette publicly accused him of malpractice, ruining his reputation and career. Andrew Pennington, Lynette's personal lawyer, seems loyal on the surface, but he has secretly joined the trip to manipulate her into signing over financial assets, aiming to embezzle her wealth. Also aboard is Ferguson, a bitter young man with no direct feud with Lynette, but who despises the wealthy and entitled. He publicly ridicules Lynette, calling her a parasite and a vampire. Even Lynette's maid Louise harbors deep resentment. She had hoped to leave Lynette's service to marry a man already married himself and requested a dowry. Lynette not only refused but mocked her and threatened to expose the affair unless she stayed in service indefinitely. However, no one despises Lynette more than Jacqueline. Betrayed by both her best friend and former fiancé, she begins stalking the newlyweds, showing up uninvited on their honeymoon to harass them, perhaps even seeking revenge. On board the cruise, the only guests with no known grudge against Lynette are the world-renowned detective Hercule Poirot and his friend Colonel Race. They are truly there for a holiday, and among the few who can be considered neutral. Surrounded by hostile passengers, Lynette seems like a lamb among wolves. Fortunately, her husband Simon appears devoted and protective, and the cruise proceeds peacefully. At first, while visiting a temple ruin along the Nile, a massive boulder nearly crushes Lynette during a group outing. It's clearly an attempted murder, not a mere accident, but with every guest having motive, identifying the real killer becomes a daunting challenge. Although she survives this first attack, Lynette ultimately cannot escape the fatal trap that awaits her. That night, Poirot had a few drinks and started feeling woozy, so he went back to his cabin early to rest. The others stayed in the lounge playing cards. Suddenly, Jacqueline walked in, clearly tipsy, and started throwing her usual sarcastic jabs at Lynette. Humiliated and furious, Lynette stormed off, and the others, sensing the awkwardness, quickly made excuses to leave. Soon, only Jacqueline, Simon, and Rosalie, Salome's daughter, were left in the lounge. Rosalie tried to leave too, but Jacqueline stopped her, insisting she stay and listen to how Simon had betrayed her. While Rosalie awkwardly listened, Simon, who'd been cleaning up the cards, finally snapped. He and Jacqueline got into a heated argument, and in the middle of it, Jacqueline suddenly pulled out a tiny pistol and shot Simon in the leg. Blood soaked through the handkerchief he used to stop the bleeding. Jacqueline was clearly shocked by what she'd done. She panicked and dropped the gun. Hearing the gunshot, young Ferguson was the first to rush in, but to everyone's surprise, Simon didn't blame Jacqueline. Instead, he gritted his teeth through the pain and calmly asked Rosalie and Ferguson to escort her back to her cabin and have the nurse take care of her while he waited for the doctor. As instructed, Rosalie and Ferguson helped Jacqueline to her room. The nurse arrived shortly after and gave her a shot of morphine to calm her down. To ensure Jacqueline wouldn't act out again, the nurse decided to stay with her the whole night. Once Jacqueline was settled, Rosalie and Ferguson went to get the doctor, who treated Simon and stabilized his injury. Rosalie asked whether they should inform Lynette, but Simon insisted she not be disturbed and said he'd tell her in the morning. Just then, Ferguson remembered the pistol Jacqueline had dropped. He rushed back to the lounge to retrieve it, but the gun was gone. The next morning, the unthinkable happened. Lynette was found dead in her cabin, shot in the head at point-blank range. Poirot and Colonel Race rushed to the scene and ordered the ship to stop immediately. To make things worse, a necklace worth £50,000 was missing from her room, and someone had left behind a smudged initial on the wall. The letter J. Was Lynette trying to name her killer with her dying breath? Naturally, all eyes turned to Jacqueline. After all, J matched her first initial, but Poirot wasn't buying it. The gunshot had been fired from extremely close range, and Lynette died instantly. She couldn't have written anything. That J was clearly planted to frame Jacqueline. The doctor confirmed that the murder weapon was the same mini pistol Jacqueline had used the night before, but despite searching the entire ship, the gun was nowhere to be found. Poirot suggested checking the river. Based on the time of death, Lynette was likely killed sometime between midnight and 2 a.m., but Jacqueline shot Simon at 11:45 p.m., and from then on, she was under constant supervision. She had no opportunity to sneak away and kill anyone. As for Simon, he was bedridden with a gunshot wound and had no clear motive to kill his new bride, so he too was ruled out. Poirot and Ray shifted their focus to motives, and it didn't take long to realize everyone else on the boat had one. Worse, no one could provide a solid alibi for the time of death. Basically, after the shooting incident, anyone could have picked up the gun and killed Lynette. In the first round of questioning, the most suspicious person was Lynette's lawyer, Andrew. Not only did he carry a gun, but Poirot discovered that he was the one who tried to crush Lynette with a stone at the temple earlier. Andrew admitted he tried to kill her once, but swore he had nothing to do with her murder. Soon after, the missing pistol was found in the river. 2 bullets were missing. Alongside it were a scarf with a bullet hole and a red-stained handkerchief. The scarf belonged to Marie, the American socialite. Someone had clearly used it as a makeshift silencer. Suspicion shifted to Marie, but she denied everything. She admitted stealing the necklace, but insisted she didn't kill Lynette. She even said she'd lost the scarf in the lounge the night before and had asked her nurse, Miss Bowers, to look for it. Bowers confirmed her story. The case was spinning in circles, so Poirot decided to try a different approach. Talk to Simon. That's when Lynette's maid Louise walked in and said something strange. "If I hadn't fallen asleep last night, if I'd been on deck, I might have seen who went into Madame's room." Then she nervously asked, "You don't suspect me, do you, Mr. Simon?" Simon gently reassured her and promised to take care of her in the future. Louise left, seemingly satisfied. Moments later, Jacqueline came by to visit Simon and apologized in person. Poirot and Race stepped out to give them some privacy. At dinner, Colonel Race noticed that the half-finished bottle of wine Poirot had been drinking the night before had turned cloudy. He asked the waiter to bring a new one, but before they could toast, a crew member burst in with another shocking report. Louise, the maid, had been found dead. Poirot and Race rushed to the scene. Louise had been murdered, her throat slashed with a scalpel. In her hand, she was clutching the edge of a banknote. Poirot guessed she had probably tried to blackmail the killer after witnessing something, so the killer silenced her. The weapon was clearly one of the doctor's surgical tools. When Poirot turned to question the doctor, Salome, the chatty author, suddenly burst in. She claimed she had seen who killed Louise. Simon immediately perked up and urged her to spill everything. Salome, clearly milking the moment, began a long, dramatic tale, but just as she reached the critical point, boom, a gunshot rang out. She collapsed, shot in the head. There was no one at the door, just a pistol lying abandoned on deck. Poirot recognized it. It belonged to the lawyer Andrew, and since his room hadn't been locked, anyone could have taken it. 3 murders in a row. Hercule Poirot can almost feel his IQ being dragged through the mud by the killer. Finally, he can't stay quiet any longer. If he waits anymore, he might just be the next one to die. Luckily, by now, all the pieces have fallen into place. It's time for the big reveal. He gathers everyone in the lounge and begins his final deduction. At first, Poirot thought Lynette's death was a crime of opportunity, that someone had stumbled upon Jacqueline's pistol and framed her in a moment of rage. But now he knows it was a cold-blooded, premeditated murder. There was always one thing that bothered Poirot. Why did he fall asleep so early that night? And why did he sleep so deeply? It wasn't because of his weight. Tonight, at dinner, Colonel Race noticed that Poirot's half-finished red wine looked slightly cloudy. That's when it hit him. Someone had drugged his drink. The killer needed Poirot unconscious during the critical moment to avoid being caught in the act. Then, there's the issue of the gun and scarf tossed into the river. 2 bullets were missing from the revolver. One hit Simon's leg and one killed Lynette. Simple, right? But here's the twist. There was a third bullet hole in the scarf. So where did that third bullet go? Now Poirot reveals the truth. The killer is Simon Doyle, Lynette's own husband. But how? Simon was badly wounded in the leg, verified by a doctor. How could he have done it? And more importantly, why would a newlywed husband murder his rich, beautiful wife? Poirot explains. Simon and Jacqueline had never broken up. Their entire drama was a staged performance. The plan all along was for Simon to marry Lynette, inherit her fortune, and then get rid of her. Pure greed masked as love. On the night of the murder, Jacqueline grabbed the writer's daughter and made a dramatic scene. She argued loudly with Simon, then fired a shot, supposedly hitting him in the leg, but in reality, she missed on purpose. Simon used a blood-soaked handkerchief to fake the injury. He then drew everyone's attention to the hysterical Jackie, buying himself a perfect alibi. Once alone, Simon picked up the gun Jackie had accidentally dropped, snuck into Lynette's cabin, and shot her dead. Before leaving, he carved a letter J at the scene, hoping to pin it on Jackie. Then he returned to the lounge, placed a scarf over the gun to muffle the sound, and shot himself in the leg for real. He reloaded a bullet into the gun, so it would seem like it was only fired twice. Then he wrapped up the gun and scarf and threw them into the river, thinking he'd covered every track. But what he didn't expect was a witness. Lynette's maid Louise had seen everything. She made a vague but ominous statement to hint that she knew the truth, hoping to blackmail the killer. Simon picked up on her hidden message and secretly passed the word to Jackie. During their next meeting, he ordered her to silence Louise forever. Jackie carried out the hit and slipped away, but was caught red-handed by Salome, the novelist. Salome rushed to tell Poirot, but took way too long getting to the point. Simon quickly realized she was about to expose everything. He loudly interrupted her, forcing her to restart her story. It was a signal, meant for Jackie in the next room. Jackie understood instantly. She stole the lawyer's gun and shot Salome dead in one clean, cold-blooded move. She was a sharpshooter, after all. Poirot's reasoning is airtight. Every detail clicks into place. But Simon, still calm, mocks Poirot, claiming it's all just theory. There's no hard proof. Poirot smiles and replies, "If you want proof, we can do a paraffin wax test," he explains. When someone fires a gun, microscopic gunpowder particles embed into their skin. A simple wax test on the hands can pull the residue out, proving if someone has fired a gun. At this point, Simon and Jackie fall into despair. Jackie quietly picks up the pistol, walks over to Simon, whispers, "I love you," and shoots him in the heart. Then, without hesitation, she turns the gun on herself. And just like that, the murders on the Nile come to an end. Justice is served, and the truth finally comes to light. But Poirot, he's not celebrating, because that so-called paraffin test, it was a bluff. He made it up on the spot. He just needed them to believe it, enough to confess with their own hands. In the end, this wasn't just a story about cunning plots and clever deductions. It was about what happens when love is twisted into obsession, when greed disguises itself as romance. When love loses its purity, it becomes a mask for desire. And when desire takes over, justice will always awaken the sleeping truth, no matter the cost. The Nile flows quietly again. It carries away secrets. It carries away lives. But it leaves behind the echoes of human nature. If you enjoyed this mystery, don't forget to like, share, and send it to someone who loves a good whodunit. See you next time.